It was a typical Tuesday evening when I decided to make a quick run to Walmart. The sun was just setting, casting long, eerie shadows across the parking lot. I parked my car and walked towards the entrance, my footsteps echoing in the quiet, almost deserted lot. Little did I know this ordinary trip would soon turn into something out of a nightmare. As I walked through the automatic doors, I was greeted by the familiar sight of bustling aisles and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery. But there was something off. A chill ran down my spine as I glanced around. Was it the flickering fluorescent lights or the unusually sparse crowd? I couldn't put my finger on it, but the air was thick with an unsettling tension. I pushed my cart towards the grocery section, trying to shake off the feeling. I needed milk, eggs, and a few other essentials. Simple enough, right? But as I turned the corner into the dairy aisle, I noticed a woman standing completely still, her back to me. Her long, disheveled hair covered most of her face. She was clutching a carton of milk so tightly that her knuckles were white. "Excuse me," I said politely, hoping to pass by. She didn't respond or move. I felt a lump form in my throat. Why wasn't she moving? Why did she seem so lifeless? Suddenly, she turned her head slowly, her eyes locking onto mine. They were wide, almost too wide, and filled with a look of sheer terror. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. What was wrong with her? "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't answer, just continued to stare at me, her mouth slowly curling into a grotesque smile. I quickly grabbed a carton of milk and hurried away, my mind racing with questions. What was that about? Who was she? Trying to calm my nerves, I moved to the next aisle. That's when I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper. It sounded like my name. I spun around, but there was no one there. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I continued shopping, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. Every now and then, I caught glimpses of shadows moving out of the corner of my eye. My heart raced faster with each passing minute. As I reached the electronics section, I saw a man standing in front of a wall of televisions, all displaying static. He was muttering to himself, rocking back and forth. His clothes were torn and dirty, and his eyes had the same wide, haunted look as the woman in the dairy aisle. Curiosity got the better of me. I took a deep breath and approached him. "Sir, do you need help?" I asked cautiously. He stopped muttering and turned to face me. His eyes were empty, devoid of any emotion. "They're coming," he whispered, barely audible. "They're everywhere." "Who's coming?" I asked, my voice shaking. Before he could answer, the lights in the store flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. Panic set in as I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to find my way. I could hear whispers all around me now, growing louder and more frantic. I rushed towards the exit, my pulse pounding in my ears. As I neared the front of the store, I saw employees and customers alike standing still, their faces twisted into the same eerie smiles. It was as if they were all under some kind of spell. Desperate to escape, I pushed through the doors and ran to my car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Finally, I managed to unlock the door and jumped in, locking it behind me. As I started the engine, I glanced back at the store. The people inside were now pressed against the glass, watching me with those wide, unblinking eyes. I sped out of the parking lot, my mind racing. What had just happened? Was it some kind of mass hysteria? A hallucination? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. As I drove away, I could still hear the whispers in my head, growing fainter with each passing mile. But one thing was clear. I would never set foot in that Walmart again. Working the night shift at Walmart was never my idea of a dream job, but it paid the bills and fit around my college schedule. I was used to the occasional oddball or strange encounter. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the chilling experience that unfolded one dreary October night, a night that would haunt my dreams for months to come. The shift began as usual. The clock struck 10 p.m., and the store's few remaining customers trickled out, leaving the aisles eerily empty. I preferred these quiet hours, free from the chaos of daytime shoppers. My task for the night was to restock the cleaning supplies aisle, so I busied myself with boxes of bleach and detergent, my mind wandering to my unfinished assignments. Around midnight, a peculiar feeling washed over me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. I glanced around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Shrugging it off, I returned to my work, though my nerves were now on edge. Then I saw him. A man, tall and gaunt, dressed in a tattered trench coat, stood at the end of the aisle. His face was obscured by the brim of an old hat, casting a shadow that hid his eyes. He just stood there, motionless, staring in my direction. I offered a polite nod, hoping he would move along, but he remained rooted to the spot. "Can I help you find something?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond, didn't even flinch. The silence stretched on, becoming increasingly uncomfortable. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and walked away without a word, disappearing around the corner. I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. Shaking off the encounter, I told myself he was probably just another strange night owl, but deep down, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my gut. As the night wore on, the store grew quieter. I had almost forgotten about the strange man when I heard it, a soft, muffled whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, an indistinct murmuring that sent chills down my spine. I stopped what I was doing and listened, trying to pinpoint the source. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty aisle. Silence. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread that was slowly overtaking me. Perhaps I was just tired, imagining things in the dim light. I decided to take a quick break and headed towards the staff room. As I passed the toy section, I heard the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter. It was soft and fleeting, like a ghostly echo. My heart pounded in my chest. The store was supposed to be empty. Who could be laughing at this hour? Turning the corner, I saw a small girl standing in the middle of the aisle, clutching a ragged doll. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with long, tangled hair partially covering her face. Her clothes were outdated, like something from a bygone era, and they were dirty and torn. "Hey there," I said softly, trying not to startle her. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" She didn't answer, just tilted her head and looked at me with wide, unblinking eyes. They were a deep, unsettling shade of black. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Let's get you to the front and find your mom and dad," I said, stepping closer. As I did, she turned and ran, her bare feet making no sound on the tiled floor. I chased after her, but she moved impossibly fast, darting around corners and slipping out of sight. Breathless and on edge, I reached the front of the store, but there was no sign of her. I checked the security monitors in the surveillance room, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the screens. The cameras showed the toy aisle where I'd seen the girl, but it was empty. No child, no doll, nothing. I rewound the footage and watched again, but there was no trace of her ever being there. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Desperation and fear clawed at me. I reviewed the footage from the cleaning supplies aisle, hoping to find the man in the trench coat. There he was, standing still as a statue, staring at me. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the moments where I glanced away, he seemed to flicker, his image distorting as if he were not entirely real. Suddenly the monitors went black, and the lights in the store flickered. The soft whispering returned, louder this time, surrounding me. I felt an icy breath on the back of my neck and turned to find myself face to face with the girl, her eyes like voids, and the man standing just behind her, his shadowy form looming over us both. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and bolted for the exit. As I burst through the doors into the cool night air, the whispers ceased, and the oppressive presence lifted. I never looked back, not once, as I ran to my car and sped home. I quit my job at Walmart the next day, too terrified to return. To this day, I don't know what I encountered that night, spirits, hallucinations, or something far worse. But every time I pass by that store, I feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, and I can't help but shiver. The evening air was thick with humidity as I made my way to Walmart, the neon sign buzzing softly against the twilight sky. The parking lot was unusually full, yet there was an odd stillness, as if the world held its breath. I shrugged off the unease and entered the store, the automatic doors sliding shut behind me with a hushed whoosh. As I navigated the aisles, the normal clatter and chatter seemed muffled. The shelves loomed high, casting elongated shadows that seemed to writhe in the corners of my vision. I grabbed a basket and headed towards the produce section. I was in the middle of picking out some apples when I felt a presence behind me. I turned and saw a man standing there, staring at me intently. His clothes were neat, almost too neat, and his eyes bore into mine with a piercing gaze. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond, just continued to stare. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Deciding to ignore him, I moved to the next aisle, but he followed, his footsteps eerily silent. Was he watching me? Why wouldn't he speak? I quickened my pace, weaving through aisles, but no matter where I went, he was always a step behind. Panic started to creep in. What did he want from me? I turned a corner sharply, hoping to lose him, but collided with a display of canned goods. They clattered to the floor, echoing loudly in the unnaturally quiet store. A few shoppers turned to look, their faces blank and expressionless. I mumbled an apology and quickly moved on, my heart racing. I needed to get out of here. I made my way to the back of the store, hoping to find a quiet corner to collect myself. I found myself in the toy aisle, surrounded by rows of dolls with vacant, glassy eyes. Suddenly, one of the dolls fell off the shelf and landed at my feet. I picked it up, noticing a small, folded piece of paper tucked into its dress. Curiosity piqued, I unfolded the note. It read, "Leave now, they're watching." My heart skipped a beat. Who was watching? And why did they want me to leave? I glanced around nervously, the man from earlier nowhere in sight. Maybe this was some kind of prank. But something in the air told me otherwise. I decided it was time to go. Abandoning my basket, I made a beeline for the exit. As I passed the electronics section, the TVs all flickered on simultaneously, displaying static. The static slowly morphed into an image of my own face, eyes wide with fear. "What the?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Suddenly, the screen changed to a message. "Don't look back." A surge of terror propelled me forward. I burst through the doors and into the parking lot, the oppressive stillness replaced by the distant hum of traffic. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. As I started the engine, I made the mistake of glancing back at the store. There, standing just outside the doors, was the man. But he wasn't alone. A crowd of people stood with him, all staring at me with the same unnerving intensity. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and then, as one, they smiled. I tore my gaze away and floored the accelerator, the tires screeching as I sped out of the lot. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, my mind racing. What had just happened? Who were those people? And what did they want with me? As I drove away, the Walmart sign disappeared into the distance, but the questions lingered. Was it a warning? A threat? One thing was certain. I wouldn't be returning to that store anytime soon. Weeks passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I passed by a reflective surface, I half expected to see those hollow eyes staring back at me. I started to avoid mirrors, convinced that something had followed me home that night. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the TV suddenly flickered on by itself. Static filled the screen. Then slowly my own terrified face appeared. A chill swept through me as a familiar message scrolled across the screen. "Don't look back." I didn't sleep that night, and I never shopped at Walmart again.